It just,
And it was busy. It was a day. Like
Go ahead and hit the lower left button and run the intro. Good morning. Uh-oh. There we go.
I like how everybody's more excited to see Steve in the chat than than us on the camera. And Steve used to be on camera. Where was all that excitement when Steve was actually on camera?
We need to grab a clip of Hammer Time to play every time Steve comes on. Parachute pants and all.
Oh, you know what? It'd be worth it just to see Steve in parachute pants.
You know, I bet I could achieve that with AI. I could deep fake that. So, good morning. We got a Told You So show today. So, we've already covered the Trump's indictment and the, it's super conveniently, right around the same time that Trump was indicted, there was this audio file that came out. And it seemed to be super damning. And in fact, I went ahead and pulled up the article referencing that from the Rolling Stone. And I went with the Rolling Stone in particular because what we now know, and we'll get to that in just a minute, but what we now know is that this is a hoax. This is deliberately misleading information. And so I pulled up the Rolling Stone because they're so infamous for their hoaxes. Remember the lacrosse team gang rape story, that it wasn't overblown, it wasn't ill-reported, it wasn't that they got their facts wrong. It was fabricated entirely from whole cloth, an outright lie. And then when they got caught, their defense of the lie was, well, it happens all the time everywhere. And we've talked about this on the show many times before. If that were the case, then where are those stories? If this is a thing that just happens all the time, you're telling me that this thing occurs all the time. It is a common occurrence. And not one of those stories is reported on. It's certainly strange credulity. Speaking of strange credulity, my contention originally was that anytime you see something like this, I mean, it says Trump caught showing off classified doc he said he didn't have. In the recording obtained by CNN, Trump is heard discussing an example of a document provided to him by General Mark Milley to attack Iran. That's not what you hear in the tape, though. And, hey, isn't this handy? We've got the recording that's being referenced. So we're going to listen to this. It's a 2-minute audio recording. I'll probably stop it a couple times, but we're going to listen to this recording. There's nothing really to say.
These are bad, sick people.
I'm a
That was your coup, against you.
Well, it started right at the
like
beginning.
when Milley's talking about, you were going to try to do a coup. No, they were trying to do that before you even were sworn in.
That's right.
Trying to overthrow your election.
Well, with Milley, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look. This was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him.
So, what we're led to believe by the Rolling Stone in this article, you see the ellipses here. These are the papers. ... This is secret information. The ellipses here show that a lot of information has been redacted, essentially. They've skipped from these words to these words. And as you'll notice if you listen to the tape, he doesn't even actually say these words. He says something kind of close to that. And then he says, this is secret information, quite separately. And what we now know is that, they suggest here, do they suggest or do they outright say it? I forget now. Is proof that Trump not only kept documents containing highly classified national secret information, but showed them to individuals not authorized to see them. That's interesting. The full audio of the conversation had previously been unavailable to the public. Can be heard shuffling papers and discussing an example of documents provided to him by General Mark Milley containing alleged plans to attack Iran. So now we know that the document... Go away. The documents in question, so this is from yesterday. Iran plan of attack memo referenced in Trump audio not included among charges against him. The documents that are being listed in the trove of allegedly classified documents that Donald Trump is charged or has been indicted for retaining do not include the Iran memo that Rolling Stone and several others, I'm picking on Rolling Stone for a purpose, and several others have tried to make you believe were the documents that he had in his hand during this conversation. It turns out that right before that audio, that's not it. I've got a lot pulled up here, bear with me. There it is. Right before that audio, the New Yorker published this article. You're going to have a fucking war, Mark Milley's fight to stop Trump from striking Iran. And we're now being told by sources, we're being told by reporters that sources are pointing out that, no, the thing that Donald Trump had in his hand was the New Yorker article. So this is the article. We don't really need to go through this article in particular, but essentially it looks like what happened is Donald Trump grabbed a sheaf of paper that included the article where Milley said, Trump's trying to start a war, et cetera, and Trump held up that article and said, the things he's talking about, right, I'm paraphrasing for clarity, But essentially, it looks like what Donald Trump was actually saying is the things that Milley is discussing in this article are still classified sensitive information, which he's discussing on the record with a reporter. So it looks like if this tape is evidence of anything, it's evidence of Milley leaking classified information to someone at the New Yorker or some other press agent. So going back to what I said before about Alex says, I see where you're headed. You know what will clear this up? The other two people in the room who are now being deposed. Exactly. 100%. So if Trump, the audio recording in no way shows what document it is that Trump is holding. The suggestion by the Rolling Stone and others is that the document he was holding was in fact the document in question, that being the memo from Milley on attacking Iran. If that were the case, if Donald Trump was in possession of that document, and according to the recording, he said he didn't declassify that. He could have then, but he can't now. It sounds to me like what he's saying is that particular piece of information was not removed from secure facility, was not declassified, and Milley is here discussing it on the record. And there is a definite distinction between Trump and Milley in that Milley at no point in history has ever had unilateral declassification authority. See, if a sitting president wants to just discuss what's classified with any old reporter, his authority to declassify covers that. He can just come out and say there are aliens if that's the thing. Now, a vice president, however, does not have that authority. For example, if you were to, I don't know, just what's some random, ridiculous, obviously insane, absurd thing that could never happen in a reasonable world. Oh, you point at the football on live television 3 separate times, ruining 3 separate Secret Service agents' careers. Joe Biden, you piece of shit. So so Alex says we really don't know what the president's privileges are. We do to a pretty substantial extent. The thing that will be tested in the courts, Alex, is not whether or not the president has the authority to declassify documents. It will be how that authority how those documents and the authority to retain them crosses the kind of plenary threshold between being president and no longer being the sitting president. But there is a reason, and in part under the law it has to do with the impeachment process, that we continue to refer to the president after he's left office as Mr. President. There have been some very, very good legal arguments that Trump cannot be indicted over this because he first has to be impeached for it, even though he's no longer in office. And that's a constitutional argument. And I'll be frank, it's an argument that I've heard. I've heard it made very intelligibly, but I don't quite have the chops to understand it well enough to repeat it clearly and succinctly, and I apologize for that shortcoming, but there it is. So back to the document thing. My first gut reaction, and what I said on the show when we talked about this before, is that I will always give Donald Trump, pretty much more than any other person I can think of, the benefit of the doubt in a case like this, precisely because it is the case that I can't think of an exception, every former case of such an attack has been founded on evidence that was fabricated by either or and agents of the federal government, the Department of Justice, the mass media machine, or some collaboration there betwixt. Right? We know that the Russia hoax to impeach Donald Trump, we now clearly know that even if you can make the argument that it wasn't the DOJ and the federal government itself engaged in collusion with the Democrat National Committee, the Hillary Clinton campaign, laundered through Perkins Coie, to conduct that hoax, even if you can argue that it wasn't the DOJ itself, you cannot make a cogent argument that agents of the DOJ were not actively involved in that, which, frankly, is the same thing. That's what the word agent means. That's why insurance companies make such a big deal, take such drastic steps to cover their own asses when they start talking about the representation that is supplied by their agents to their customers. If you're an insurance agent and you say, oh, your policy does X, Y, and Z, let me write it on the contract before you sign it, an insurance company can be held liable for that. And, buddy, that can be the end of your career or even your personal liberty. The word agent is very important in that context. How you doing?
I'm okay. I mean, you had a head of steam, and I didn't want to get in the way. I mean, but this isn't surprising.
No, it's.
I mean, this literally fits the pattern for so many of the other hoaxes associated with Donald Trump. The very fine people on both sides hoax. Well, if you look at the whole thing, he never called neo-Nazis fine people.
Right.
The Mexico is sending us
Yep.
the Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers. No, what he said is Mexico is sending us their rapists and drug dealers. And everything on down the line where if you don't have Trump derangement syndrome, once you get the full context of what happened, oh, no, actually, we've just changed the meaning, everything. Like, Trump never said drink bleach.
Right.
Okay?
Literally every negative opinion that the Democrat voter has of Donald Trump, with the exception of the opinion that he's not a deranged communist, is essentially the product of a hoax that was perpetrated explicitly to propagandize that particular negative opinion into the public conversation, into the public arena.
So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, is the point, because this is how Donald Trump's entire presidency has been. And Scott Adams has been making a point lately that I'm really coming to understand is true on multiple levels. Anytime you see a story about a person, not about a thing, not about an event, but about a person, you could go ahead and assume that the story about the person is false. Now, it could be false because you only have half the story. It could be false because you're missing one key piece of context, or it could be false because it's not as bad, or excuse me, it's actually even worse than they're letting on.
Right.
But you could just go ahead and assume that 99% of the time you see a story about a person, it's false. So the fact that this happened with Trump again, like, we have an internal group chat, and Chris dropped an article about this in our internal group chat. And my first thought in seeing the thing was like, oh, well, there's a thing that doesn't surprise. Wait a minute. You mean you took something Donald Trump said out of context and made it look 10 times worse than it actually was? No, you've never done that before.
And I want to reiterate, what has happened here is not that they took something he said that's actually bad.
This is one of those things where if you want to correct it, go ahead. But I'm just trying to make a point.
Well, no, I think this is an important distinction. They didn't take a thing that's actually bad and make it look worse.
I know.
They took a thing that's completely not bad. Right? Donald Trump, in this was a perfect phone call, right? They took a thing here where Donald Trump says, look at this piece of paper that's not a classified document, but references one, and tried to make you believe that rather than he did nothing wrong, that he committed treason and, according to The View, with the intent of selling nuclear secrets to Russia and China. Somehow they extrapolated that from the whole debacle. And that's it's like we're not talking about drone strikes on American citizens here, right? That you could sweep under the rug, Barry. But in this case, I don't mean to quibble, but it is an important distinction. This isn't even, he said something that was ill-advised, and we're going to make it look like it was just an absolute horror show. There wasn't even a bad move in the document, in the audio, but we're going to lie to you. We're going to insert a piece of completely absent context, which is actually counterfactual for the explicit purpose of creating the false assertion that what he said here is somehow inculpatory of a criminal activity of which there's no evidence that he even committed. That's amazing. This is actually more damning than the FBI providing fabricated images of Kyle Rittenhouse in an attempt to sabotage his defense.
I don't remember the FBI providing fabricated images. I thought they withheld images.
They did that too. They did both.
Who did they give the fabricated images to?
To the prosecution.
What were the fabricated
images? They took photographs long range with a drone.
Okay.
And then they blew them up so that you could see better.
Okay.
When you increase the size of an image digitally,
I know how cameras work. Yes.
That doesn't have anything to do with how cameras work. That has to do with how image processing software works. So when you take a low resolution image and blow it up, the computer has to insert pixels, which creates artifacting, which changes the content of the image. And when you're pointing at a single 1 pixel wide straight line and trying to say that is a gun or something of the sort in an image that has been digitally altered.
Okay, so they weren't fabricated, they were digitally altered.
No, they were fabricated. That is not the original image.
Okay.
This is not a distinction without a difference.
Okay.
Additional information which was not originally captured by the image processing equipment was added to the image. This is not different than the Democrat.
I said okay.
It's not. No, stick with me here. This is no different than the Democrat committee adding audio to security footage from January 6th, which was taken by cameras that don't have microphones. This is the same. That is the same as if somebody were to take a marker and draw a gun into the picture to say that the burglar was armed when he robbed the convenience store, even though he actually did it with a note. It is materially indistinguishable. Steve points out the timing is too perfect. By the time this goes to court, it'll keep him tied up throughout the election cycle, no matter guilty or innocent. Not only that, I think there's a good chance Trump beats this indictment entirely. In fact, I think that there are a lot of factors in play here, including the venue where the trial is set to be held, which is in Florida. It is in a Trump-friendly area. I think there's a very good chance that the whole thing with the classified documents that we're looking at now gets thrown out entirely. And I basically suspect that the following week, right, that's going to happen in about February or March. And then the following week, the indictment from What's-Her-Face in Atlanta is going to come down. And that one is going to fail as well. And it'll fail a month or two before the election.
The stuff that I'm following,
and then the October surprise will be the indictment that nobody knows about, that's going to be filed by Gavin Newsom's cronies in California.
The stuff that I'm following says that Fani Willis is planning to indict in August. Just
okay.
I mean,
and That may be. She may suspect that that this whole classified documents indictment gets beaten by then, but I strongly suspect that there will be some sort of a delay. If she says she's going to get it done in August, and this is still pending, my point is these indictments exist for no reason other than to hamper Trump's election. These indictments, all of them, even their open discussion in the media against Donald Trump, they're completely politically motivated. These prosecutors that are bringing these indictments should be disbarred because it's so painfully obvious that they're bringing indictments where they do not have a reasonable chance to secure a conviction, and their professional standards boards are supposed to preempt them from doing such a thing. Right? You've got a guy who you know in your gut is guilty as hell, but you're a prosecutor and you look at the evidence and say, even on a technicality, this guy is likely to get off. It is your legal obligation not to pursue that prosecution. That's why the prosecutor in the I almost said Floyd, the Zimmerman case. That's why he got fired. He refused to prosecute Zimmerman because he said there is no reasonable chance that you can expect a conviction out of this prosecution. So it cannot be pursued. So they fired him and brought in a woman that said, "I don't care what the laws are. Sure, Eric Holder, I'll hold your nuts." And boy, did she. And boy, did that not work out for her.
Yeah. I'd like to just respond to something real quick. Alice Tesha 1700 says, "Don't believe your lying ears." Sarcasm is difficult to detect on the internet. Like, we need a universally accepted sarcasm font because, it can be difficult to detect. But they say, "Don't believe your lying ears."
Now, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?
Yeah, well, look, that's one my dad used to hit me with, actually. "Well, son, what should I believe, you or my lying eyes?" And it's like, oh, okay, that's hard to argue with. But in this case with Donald Trump, okay, your lying ears. The first thing that was always odd to me was, of course, why do we have audio with no video? Because, Donald Trump doesn't have a problem with cameras.
Right.
Like, at all. And it's not that he didn't have the conversation. It's not that he didn't reference classified documents. But as happens so often with Trump, you hear the thing sounds terrible, but then if you could take your emotions and put them in this little box and close the lid on that box and use your logic and look at the entire context of whatever Trump said, whatever he said is never as bad as they make it sound if it's not even an outright fabrication. Donald Trump never actually said drink bleach. Donald Trump did say disinfect your insides because it turns out they were making ventilators that had UV lights inside of them that could literally disinfect your lungs from the inside out. So yes, you could literally disinfect the inside of your body, and this is what Donald Trump was referencing. But by the time you heard about it on the 6 o'clock news on CNN, what you heard was Donald Trump said to drink bleach, which is a thing that never happened. So believe me or my lying ears. Well, okay, there's a third option, and the third option is every other time because we're coming up on what, 7 or 8 years now of we got him this time, we got him this time, we got him this time. Literally, it's been almost a decade of saying, we've got Trump, we've got Trump, we've got Trump. Here's the proof, here's the proof, here's the proof. And every single time, and I mean every single fucking time, it's either been exaggerated or outright false. So to find out that the whole thing with this audio recording was bullshit doesn't surprise me, and shouldn't surprise anybody that has the ability to separate their emotion and just think.
Right. So Alice Teka, that's adorable. clearly what's happened is you came in at the end of the show and you missed all of the earlier conversation, so your comments are irrelevant. You're not adequately informed to engage in the
it's
topic.
actually making my point. They obviously can't sit. Alice is so busy trying to throw snark based in emotion, they're not listening to what I just said, and they didn't hear the beginning of the show.
Right. Now, so Alex says, but the prosecutors have heard from them, and maybe they're stupid enough to include that transcript in the indictment when there was no classified document in the room. That would be incredibly and powerfully damaging to the prosecution.
Donald Trump makes people do stupid things.
He does. He does indeed.
There's no love him or hate him, he gets a reaction.
He does indeed. So that's about all I've got for today, except this one last thing. Alex, I missed you at the last GOP meeting, and I've still got your fucking coffee cup. So I hope I'll see you in a week. Roger? You got anything else, brother?
No, I just whatever, you know. I'm not surprised.
Okay, great. I got one last comment. Alice Tekka 1700. See you when Trump gets convicted. See you, pumpkins. That's right, sunshine, because those walls are just a closing in.
Yeah, they have been for like how long now?
10 years? 12? It's been a hot damn minute. So y'all be safe out there. And okay, Alex says he's going to be covering this tonight as well. Brother, I got a thick day in the real estate world today. I'm going to try to stay awake and watch your show tonight. I have not caught it in about 2 weeks, and I'm sorry. I'm going to try to catch it tonight. Y'all be safe. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.